Welcome to the Mixology Talk podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Julia, and we're the folks behind abarabove.com, the ultimate resource for craft bartenders, bar managers, and pretty much anybody who's looking to make tasty drinks.
So I'm a bar consultant with over 10 years of hospitality experience.
And I run abarabove.com, where we bring weekly articles and cocktail recipes to help you make delicious drinks and grow your career behind the bar.
This is episode number 123, and this is the third episode in a three-part series on how to get a bar manager job.
If you're just joining us, you may want to start with episode 121. That's the first part of the series, where we talk about things like, do you really want to be a bar manager? And how to get started with the process, like preparing your resume and things like that. The next episode, 122, is all about things like preparing your resume getting your resume into the hands of the hiring manager, finding where you want to apply, and putting your best foot forward so that you actually get a call back and get invited to
The interview. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Arguably the hardest part is the interview process. So that's what we'll be covering, and stay tuned.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
So before we get too in-depth in the specific steps you want to take to prepare and do a good job in your interview, I think it's important that we actually talk about the typical structure of a bar manager interview. My understanding is that it's a three-part process.
Yeah.
Step one is an initial interview. Step two is fairly common, but not always going to happen, and that will be a stage. And step three is going to be a more in-depth final interview.
Yeah, that's about right, and it can vary from place to place, obviously, but in kind of the environment that I've seen, that's a typical formula for hiring. So we'll definitely go through all three steps today.
So before we get too much into those steps, I think it's important to talk about preparation. I know we always start here, but it's important. And I think the very first step in preparation is to do your homework. Hopefully, before you actually started applying anywhere, you actually took a moment to sit at their bar and take a look around. But if you haven't, now's the time.
Yeah, and there's a couple things you really want to pinpoint when you're sitting there at the bar and really start to examine. First of all, just how's the atmosphere? Is it a cool place? Do you think you can get along? Are the bartenders and staff pretty outgoing?
How do they treat each other?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you see managers? What are they wearing? How are they carrying themselves? What are they doing? All these things are things you just want to pay attention to, notice, and just kind of put it in the back of your head, because this is going to come out during an interview process, or it could be something you really pay attention to in preparation of getting ready for your interview. Absolutely.
Not just to make sure you're prepared for your interview, but also just as a triple check to make sure you like the place.
Yeah.
If you walk in the door and it's just a super toxic environment where the bartenders are treating each other terribly and the customers aren't really that into it, and for whatever reason, this might be a good signal to
find someplace else to work, because you don't want to be on the streets again in 6 months with another 6-month job on your resume, trying to figure out, where you're going to land. So
but it's a huge time commitment to get through the interview process. So if it's not going to work out, you may as well save everybody the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's other things to do to kind of get prepared for this very first interview. One of them is just understanding who they are as a company, as a bar. What are they trying to accomplish? If they are kind of a regional restaurant or bar, let's say they're French, and you don't know much about French food or French wine or even French aperitifs or cocktails or anything like that, now it could be a good time to start understanding that information, building your information up. Look at cocktails, look at the beer menu, look at the wine menu, and you can pull a lot of information and kind of familiarize yourself with any place that you don't have a lot of deep knowledge in.
Yeah, definitely. If there's some key wines on the menu that you've never heard of, it might be worth Googling them just to make sure that you've got that baseline.
Absolutely. Now, there's a couple other ways you can do this as well. We often talk about the nasty four-letter word in our industry.
Starts with a Y, ends with a P.
And it rhymes with help. So, but they're a great resource for information. I know we all hate them in the industry for good or bad reasons. But they will absolutely give you pointers on what you're about to walk into. This is something I think Julie and I have talked about actually probably off camera,
Yeah.
is when you look up the place you're going to be working at, or hopefully be working at. If you look up their name, right next to their name is either a hyperlink or another area you can look at, and it says trends. And it'll show you how they're trending over time on the reviews. Are they a 5? Are they a 3.5? And you can see kind of the direction they're heading.
And I think that can be really good information. But not only that, actually taking the time to read, especially recent reviews, and look for common themes. If you're seeing things like, I went 2 weeks ago and had an amazing Manhattan, and I went last night and I ordered a Manhattan and it was terrible.
It was the worst Manhattan of my life.
Or if you're seeing long wait times, if you're seeing issues with attitude with the folks who work there, these are really good signs or I should say not good signs, but they are good information to have. I would just put that in your back pocket, because in my mind, if I'm hiring a manager for my team, I'm well aware of what's happening on Yelp.
Right.
I know what these challenges are, and I'm going to want somebody who can help me tackle them.
Right. And
so I'm probably going to ask about them.
Right, absolutely. And it's a good way of kind of rounding out your management skill set. If you can hire somebody that can fill those gaps and provide solutions to that, that's an absolutely fantastic idea. And, just kind of be prepared for those questions before you walk into the door. Now, we're not saying call them out on it, because that's kind of being a jerk about
Awkward.
it. But, if they bring it up, then you can start to talk about what you would do or what you've seen in the past.
And keep it hypothetical.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, if somebody asks you a question about, like, how would you maintain consistency at the bar, I wouldn't reply with, oh my gosh, I read that Yelp review. I cannot believe you made a Manhattan that way. That's just awkward. Don't make it weird. I think that's a good strategy in general for interviewing. Don't make it weird.
Don't make it weird.
The last thing that I would say in terms of research, maybe just like a hint on the stalkery side, but like not too far. And that would be just kind of generally asking around. It would be good to know a sense for why the prior manager left.
Yeah.
For example, I'm making this up, but maybe the prior manager was fired because they just couldn't support the wine program. They didn't have the knowledge to support the wine program. If that's the case, oh my gosh, study the wine program. That's really, really good information. Or, you were joking about a bar, maybe the prior guy left because he was thrown in jail for embezzling $150,000.
Right.
Good to know.
Or he went out on a big coked out rage and just left the building. Happens. You want to know that kind of information.
I get ragey when I have a lot of Coca-Cola too. I get really, really, really hyper.
But this is information you could start to ask around with the vendors. Like, hey, by the way, Tom, I know, I'm heading over to this place to do an interview. Any word, anything you know? Most likely, especially if you've built up a good relationship, like we've talked about. Since
a billion times.
The beginning of this podcast, basically.
Beating a dead horse with a dead horse.
With a dead horse, right.
On top of another dead horse.
Is they're going to tell you, because they have a solid reputation with you. They know that if you become a bar manager, you're probably going to pull them into that restaurant to be their vendor.
It's in their interest.
So this is kind of how this all works, and how it kind of all funnels into this one point. So they'll be able to give you some good information, like, oh yeah, no, they're a great program. I could see you being really well, you're doing really well there.
Yeah.
Or maybe something else.
Maybe like, you do not want to get on that burning ship.
Right.
Everybody's I don't know,
leaving.
But
right.
If they've gone through 7 bar managers in 7 weeks, maybe you don't want to be a part of that.
Right.
Train
Absolutely.
Wreck. It would be, sometimes gossip is useful.
It's earned. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes, as much as I hate saying it.
So do your due diligence.
Your what?
Due diligence. Look around, get the inside scoops, and be prepared. Know what you're walking into. And then I guess we can kind of go into the next step, right?
I think the next step would really be preparing yourself. And this could be everything from, like, have a shower that morning to,
highly advised.
I think it's a great idea to, like, things like it just standard interview prep, like preparing yourself with common questions. I think that, the most obvious thing to me really is to just go online and look up common bar management questions. Yeah,
this is really help you out. There's some standard questions that I like to ask, have been asked. There's the old common one with, tell me about your strengths. What's your biggest weakness? That kind of stuff.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Right, exactly. So, be prepared for the common ones, but there's also going to be a lot of more specific ones. And doing your research to figure out, all right, they probably looked up the same stinking questions last night before the
Googled
interview. So they probably have the exact same ones, the top 3 in Google.
Review those.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And be prepared for those.
I was once given a really good piece of advice about interview questions, and that was to really think really hard and figure out the 1 or 2 questions that I was most afraid they would ask.
Oh, that's good.
And in my case, back in the day, I wasn't interviewing for a bar position. I was actually kind of in the more technical world. And so I would do more like project management. And I was always really afraid of technical questions because I wasn't super in depth on like database stuff, but I was afraid that they would ask me about that. And so what I did is I prepared an answer in advance, which was something along the lines of like, no, I don't have a lot of experience with database structure, but I'm really looking forward to learning that on the job, things like that. But the key message here is, first of all, know what you're concerned about, because then you can prepare those answers.
Right.
You at least, even if the answer isn't the best answer in the world, you're ready with it. And I think the other thing is, they're not going to ask. They've never asked the question that I was afraid that they would ask. So, but it can also help you be really honest with yourself on like where are the gaps on your resume. Like if they come back and they're like, well, I see there's nothing happened between July 2013 and December 2013. What happened there? I mean, if you're afraid of them asking, there's probably a reason for that. Find a way to prepare that answer when you're on your own time and you have your own opportunity to be thoughtful, so you're not a deer in the headlights in the moment.
Yeah, and we'll talk about body language here in a second, but being prepared mentally is a huge part of this interview process. Knowing the questions, knowing the answers, being positive, not talking trash about anybody you've worked with or for in the past. These are all just general good tips for interviewing. So definitely want to be prepared with those.
And the more prepared you are, especially for those things that you're afraid of, you're just going to stand taller in the interview. You're going to feel so much more confident, even if it's something that nobody ever asks, because they probably won't. It's worth it. It's worth the effort to sit down there and actually figure out what you would say in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we have a bunch of favorite interview questions, but I'm going to go ahead and put those in the show notes. I promise it is not where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
We do have, I have some questions that I absolutely love.
So I'll put those in the show notes, because otherwise it would be really boring if we were just listing them here. But you can find them at mixologytalk.com/123.
Perfect. So the last point about being prepared is knowing how much money you need to make. There's a lot of different ways bar managers are paid. So having that number in your head of how much money is it going to take for me to survive is really, really good.
Yeah, especially if you're coming from a bartender role where you are typically paid with an hourly rate plus tips. If you're switching to a bar manager role, which is typically no tips at all and often salary, the math is just really different.
Yeah.
So don't make an assumption here. Sit down, do the math, figure out how much does it cost you to live and how much do you actually need to make in a salary structured compensation structure, so that you're not surprised, and I mean most of all so that you don't agree to something you can't actually survive on. Right,
and this is really important. This is something we've talked about, I think, in the last episode at 122, and also the interview I did with Jennifer Collio. And it's really important to set yourself up financially, because what the common scenario is for bartenders going to bar management is you actually lose money. You go from, working 40 hours a week, making decent money with the tips behind the bar, to working 50 to 60 hours. I was working 90 plus hours.
Absolutely. And you were making so much less.
I was making half.
Yeah.
So
not per hour, overall.
Take home, per year.
Amount of money in the bank account.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it was for good reasons. I knew I needed that evolution in my career, but it is really important not to devalue yourself. Set yourself up so that way you can do this job long term and still learn and grow and move forward. Because if you don't, you can easily start to resent the job. And I've seen this a lot of times. Is when the bartenders are making substantially more money than you, and you can barely pay your rent. I mean, that's just a
hard.
Bad position to be in.
Yeah, and I think that it isn't uncommon to make less as a bar manager than a bartender, and I don't think it's uncommon to make that investment in your own career.
Right.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying you should say, I need to make the same amount I made before or more.
Right.
What I'm saying is you need to make enough money so you can eat and like pay your rent.
And have somewhat of a lifestyle. I mean,
Right.
because part of being a manager is knowing everybody else in town and networking professionally on that end. So,
Yeah.
you know, make sure that you have at least a comfortable living where you can do that maybe once a month or once a week, whatever it is, but know the number. Or else you're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, you don't want to go into an interview and have them ask you, you know, what are your salary expectations, and
Right.
just to throw a number out of nowhere. That's
Right.
you really want to make this.
Yeah, just be prepared.
Do the math.
Just kind of what we're talking about. Just
Exactly.
be prepared.
Okay, I think we've covered the like advanced preparation.
Sure.
Now let's talk about kind of the more day of kind of stuff. So you've got your interview date, and you're kind of ready. You've done your interview questions. You're ready to go. How do you prepare on the day of?
Well, I mean, I think you touched on this earlier, and that's obviously number one, shower.
Shower. Yeah, I think highly recommended.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Brush your teeth.
Yeah,
You know,
bonus.
shave. You know, that
I mean,
kind of
if
stuff.
appropriate.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, the beard.
That's
yeah,
true.
it could definitely
Yeah.
fit in
Maybe
the right
tidy.
place.
Maybe tidy up the beard.
Basically, personal hygiene, groom yourself.
Give
be
your
prepared.
suspenders a little extra stretch. I don't know
A
how
little
you do
oil
this.
on the mustache, a little
Yeah,
extra.
I mean, I don't know the craft bartender grooming anymore. Maybe the pomade? Do you need the
You
pomade?
definitely need pomade.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. See, I'm totally behind the times.
But
Do you grease your tattoos? Is there any kind
I
of
don't
tattoo
know. I don't have any
maintenance?
tattoos. How
Oh,
crazy is that? I might be the only bartender
I know.
that doesn't have any
Yeah.
tattoos.
Do you need them like shiny? I don't. Do
Glistening?
you polish them? I
don't
don't.
know.
Wax on, wax off. I don't know. We're bad at this. But maybe you can give us some advice on
Right.
how you shiny up
Make
your
your
tattoos.
tattoos pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make them pop. The Sharpie? I don't know. So the kind of odd thing about our industry is that, you know, with a lot of industries, they just say show up in a button-up shirt and a suit
Yeah.
or whatever for management interviews. But that's just not necessarily the case with our industry. It is so subjective. 10 years ago, if you asked me this, I would have said button-up shirt, clean-shaven,
Cover up your tattoos.
cover up your tattoos, all this stuff.
That's not who we are anymore.
You can't just make that generalization anymore. Even for fine dining, especially in like San Francisco, New York, Seattle, these kinds of markets. Who knows? You know, it could be very common for you to have a big burly beard and tattoos and stuff.
Yeah.
You really have to read your environment. So really lean on that. I'm not going to tell you how to dress because you're just gonna have to take a look and suss it out for yourself.
Right, and this is where that recon we talked
Yeah.
about earlier definitely comes in handy. And
Yeah.
you'll be a lot more prepared and a lot more comfortable
Yeah.
in your interview.
So when you're packing for your interview, what do you bring? First of all, well, you
Yeah.
got it. I mean, this is your move.
Yeah, so I always bring a couple of things. Usually I have like either a briefcase with me or something like that, depending on the place. But I would always have extra resumes,
bring
nicely
copies.
done. Because typically what happens is the interviewing manager is super busy. He's probably got 5 or 10 interviews happening all at once. He hasn't had a chance to print yours out or find your resume again.
Or remember who you are.
Yeah, exactly. So he's not going to have that anchor if you don't bring it for him.
Yeah.
So just take out all the variables, bring a couple extra, I usually bring 2 resumes with me, extra pens, because if they want to jot something down or if you need to take notes, you should definitely be prepared with a pen, paper.
Maybe a pad of paper. I mean, do you bring bar tools?
Depends. Possibly. I mean, I would be prepared just with a small standard set.
Probably doesn't hurt.
Probably doesn't hurt. If they're going to ask you to make cocktails, I'd much rather have my tools than to assume they have theirs. Because if all the bartenders bring their own tools,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you don't have tools.
That's true. And it
Um,
just shows you're prepared, I think,
you're
in
a
general.
professional,
Yeah.
right?
And you're ready for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the first interview is getting to know you, but by that third interview, they may ask you to start making cocktails.
Yeah. Yeah.
So bring your stuff if you want to.
Definitely. I think as you get a little bit closer to the interview itself, I think really the key message here is do whatever you need to do to feel awesome.
Yeah.
Go to the gym that morning, have an extra cup of coffee, don't have any coffee, stretch, meditate, go
Yeah.
fishing. I don't know.
Get that playlist going.
You know you more than I
Yeah.
know you, but on those days when you feel awesome and you feel really confident and great, like do that.
Yeah,
Do whatever
absolutely.
got you there. Hopefully it includes a shower. I don't know. You do you.
But yeah, be prepared, and it's all a mental game at this point. When you walk in that door, you want to be confident, you want to be on point, You want to give the best damn interview you possibly can. And the mental stuff is where you're going to separate yourself from everyone else.
And this probably means not going out super late the night before.
Right. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Drink
really
lots of water,
be careful. Like,
get a full night's sleep.
yeah, take a couple days off of drinking. Just kind of, really get to peak performance for yourself mentally. For me, what that always meant was arriving early. And what I mean by early is not like walking through the door 5 minutes early. I would get into the area at least 30 minutes beforehand. If it's in a busy city, find a coffee shop, find some place to chill. I am a big fan of TED Talks. So when I want to get like in a zone, I'll listen to some really nice motivational TED Talks. If you have a playlist that you can just kind of get in that mental zone, have a coffee, have tea, have water.
Little White Snake.
Yeah.
You got a
Could
problem,
be.
you got
White
a problem
Snake.
with my motivational music?
No, White Snake. I'm surprised you actually know White Snake.
I love White Snake.
But White Snake, if that's your jam, you
I
can
think
do
I'm
that.
never going to hear the end of this.
Oh, I think from now on, our intro and outro, all White Snake.
It might be. I'd be so happy. I'm a fan.
But plan ahead. And then by being early to your interview, what I mean by that is don't walk in over 10 minutes early. So don't walk in 15 minutes early. Don't walk in half an hour early because it's going to be weird, right?
Yeah.
There's just too much distance and
stand
time
there.
To elapse. So walk in no more than 10 minutes early and no less than about 5 minutes before your interview. Because if you walk in on the dime, right when your interview starts, you're kind of already late.
Yeah.
You
You
know?
want to show that you want to show that that you are showing up early, but you also don't want to make it weird, like you mentioned. So that sort of 5 to 10 minute mark is really the sweet spot. And it leaves you a little bit of wiggle room. So, you have time to go up to the hostess and let her know why you're there. She has time to go find the manager and so on. So it doesn't become a rush at that point.
Yeah. And a couple other quick pointers here while we're on the subject. Usually I'll have somebody sit at the bar before their interview. This was one of my techniques for hiring bartenders was make them wait at the bar and see how they interact with the bartender. Because the bartender, as part of their job, is going to greet them and say, hi, can I get you a drink? How that interaction goes, I'm going to ask the bartender, like, hey, did they strike up a conversation or were they on their phone the entire time?
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty significant indication for me. So when you walk in the door, don't get on your phone. I mean, that's
very true.
You just don't want to do that. It sets a bad impression. And the minute you walk in the door, you're trying to set an impression.
You're on. Be nice to everybody. Same thing with when you drop the resume. I think we mentioned this in the episode last time. Be nice to everybody.
Everyone.
You are not better than the hostess.
Right.
Because that manager the hiring manager is very likely to ask her what she thought of you.
Of course, absolutely.
So, be nice.
And then the other thing is bring a couple bucks. I mean, if you're a bartender, you're going to have cash on you anyways. But most likely they're going to offer you a water or soda or something while you're waiting for your interview. And even if it's just water, I know everyone probably already does this, but throw the bartender a couple dollars because that's going to stand out. It's going to show that you pay attention and you're respectful.
Yeah.
And
when that bartender is asked about what he thought of you, he might give you a little better score.
Exactly. It's like, you know what?
$2 is a good investment.
Right. Exactly.
It's cheap.
Right. So just a couple of pointers on that. Perfect.
Okay. So getting to the interview itself. This is the first interview, like we talked about. It's probably likely to be a 3-step process. So for the first interview, this is kind of the getting to know you stage. I don't know about you, but I would just say like one of the most important things here, we've already touched upon it. It is body language. It is positivity. It is confidence.
And not arrogance, but and not like silliness. Like be professional, be focused, be on point. And just have a really positive vibe about yourself and the confidence is just going to come right through for sure.
It's going to show. I mean, that hiring manager is looking to hire somebody who's going to join his team and represent his restaurant and his bar to his clients, to his customers. He isn't going to be super impressed if you can't look him in the eye, if you don't sit up straight. I mean, he's going to want somebody who makes his place look good. Right. And so think about what he's going to be looking for.
So and I do think that the words that we use for bar manager are kind of deceiving because you're not really managing at this point. You're leading. You are the bar leader. Everyone's going to be to you to create fair policies and set an agenda, a goal that they're all working for. So you are a leader, and they're looking for a leader. So go in with that mindset as well, and that confidence.
I think that's a really good point.
Um,
you should be prepared at this point, right?
Yeah.
As far as questions go, you've already sort of prepped your questions. You should be prepared for at least a preliminary conversation about compensation. And I think that plus confidence, that's your interview, right?
Right. And I think at this point, it's kind of, they're filtering through people right now, right?
Yeah.
So you've made the first cut. Just don't be silly and don't say something that's going to make you lose that second cut unless it's something that's super important to you.
Yeah.
If they ask you, oh, what are you looking forward to learning here? If you want to grow yourself professionally, say these things. Say, look, the last place I worked at, I really tried to learn as much as I could, but they didn't want to teach me. So the things I want to really learn here is I want to learn how to read a P&L. I wanted to learn how to run a business, and I'm hoping that you can teach me these things.
Yeah.
And if they can't, and you don't get a call back, that's a good thing.
Yeah, if those things are really important to you, then it might be worth mentioning, but you should know that it is a little bit risky.
Right.
If those are deal breakers, mention them, because
Right.
you're saving everybody time if the job isn't what you want, if you don't have access to those skill sets.
Right.
But know that if they don't intend to make that kind of thing available to you, that might actually pull you out of the running.
Right. So, just make your intentions known. If it's something that you're absolutely passionate about, stick to your guns until you find the place that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Because it is really, really important. It's something that we get emails about all the time. Managers frustrated with not being able to gain the knowledge they need to move in their career because they don't get shared with, or they don't for whatever reason. So if it's important, make sure you outline that early. Or bring it up early.
Right. And you'll have another opportunity to talk about this sort of in-depth stuff in the third stage interview if you get there as well.
Perfect. So now let's say the first interview went well. It's kind of like dating.
Congratulations.
First date went well.
Well done.
You may have gotten a kiss goodnight.
What kind
I don't
of
know.
interview?
I have no idea.
That got weird.
We haven't been dating for many, many years now, so I don't even know how this stuff works. You got to swipe left, you got to swipe right. I don't know. But you got called back for your second date.
The stage,
right. So this might not be every place, but it is a fairly common practice. So we can talk about what that is if you're unfamiliar with the term, and kind of go into how to nail your stage.
So what a stage is it's kind of an observational shift. I say shift, but usually it's a couple of hours, right?
Yeah. So, during prime time usually.
Right. And the purpose of it is twofold. First of all, the one side of it is for you to see how this place runs.
Yeah.
When it's busy, when it's prime time, how does this establishment run? Who's doing what? What's going well? What's not going well? That kind of thing. And on the other side of that, they want to see how you operate in that environment as well. Now, the one caveat is, if it's a stage shift, you are not expected to work.
Yeah.
You're not paid.
Right.
So legally, I don't think you're supposed to work.
Yeah, I don't
know. That probably
that's
depends
not
on your
our
state.
that's not our subject matter. But I think the important thing to note is don't get in the way.
Yeah.
As much as you want to, if your first indication is, oh, I can make these cocktails, these guys are busy, I can pour beers, you might be doing a lot more harm than good. You don't know their policies, you don't know their procedures, you don't know their workflow.
It's risky.
By you kind of jumping in on their stuff, you wouldn't want somebody to do that for you. So just respect the space that you're in. Be very, very observant.
Yeah.
And then, if the place is going down in flames, that might be a different story. And if you feel compelled to help, ask for permission.
Yeah.
Can I clear your bar for you? Can I give this person water? Like, be really, really respectful, because if you rub the bartender the wrong way that you're observing, or whoever you're observing, you better believe they're going to talk to the hiring manager. Like, this guy or this lady, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They got in my business all night long and drove me crazy. You're not going to get called back.
Yeah, that's not a good sign. It's definitely, I think the very first rule is do no harm.
Yeah.
If all you do is stand back and watch and stay out of people's way, that's not a bad stage shift.
Right. And, be observant. So don't just sit there and twiddle your thumbs and think, oh, this is cool. I could do that.
Don't pull out your phone.
Don't pull out your phone. Don't pull out your phone.
Don't order a drink.
Right. Don't chit-chat the regulars or the cute girl or cute boy at the bar. Like, don't do that kind of stuff. There'll be time for that later.
Wait, what? Don't do that.
But be observant, because they may ask you questions. So you really want to be taken in your environment. I know some of the common practices that I've seen in the past are, so you've staged behind the bar. Now do me a favor. I want you to go home, and before the next interview, I want you to pick out 2 positive things that you saw on your stage shift, and 1 thing you would improve. So there is going to be some questions
Homework.
they may ask you
Yeah.
based off that stage shift. So don't just sit there and pass time.
Yeah. You were telling me about one of your stage shifts.
Oh, this is the best stage shift.
So this is best worst, right?
Best worst. Oh, it was so funny.
So we talk about sort of staying out of the way, but there may be some exceptions to this policy.
So brand new restaurant just opened. I mean, and anybody that's opened a restaurant knows 50% of the staff walk out in the first month easily. First, half the staff just go away. So I was like the week after they opened, I was filling the ranks again. So I staged, and it was busy. I mean, and complicated cocktail orders, 15-step cocktails, just crazy complicated cocktails. And the person I was staging behind literally picked up their tools and walked out the door. And I was like, what is going on here? And I looked at the hiring manager, and he looked at me, and the printer just kept running and running and running. I'm like,
I'm hired.
You want me to jump in this well right now? And he's like, yeah, because he didn't bartend.
Of course.
So there was one bartender and just a mad amount of people.
Talking about getting hired.
So I walk up, I pull up my first ticket, and the first order, 4 caipirinhas. I'm like, I know why he left. Okay, here we go. And so I cranked out cocktails for the next hour. On a stage shift, I wasn't even making tips or getting paid for.
But
Needless to say, I got the job.
Yeah.
But to Julia's point,
it's risky.
It's risky, and you really can't, you have to ask permission. What do you want me to do here?
And you did. You looked at the hiring manager, and you're like,
where do you want me to go here?
Yeah.
I can jump in this well right now and bail us all out, or I could just sit here and watch you go down in flames. So
your choice.
Yeah. And so that's an extreme example of a stage shift gone right and wrong.
Right for you.
Right.
Wrong for the restaurant.
Things did get better over time.
Yeah.
But just it's crazy opening a restaurant. I can't tell you enough how crazy it is.
Yeah. But the big thing is, to your point, be prepared for the bar to be looking at you and how you respond to the environment, and be prepared to get some questions about your experience as well.
Right.
If they come back and ask you for your experience and you're like, I don't know, it looked pretty good to me, it looks like you weren't paying attention.
Right, absolutely.
So step 3.
So let's say you just got off your second date. Now it's time for the third date.
You made it. Congratulations.
So hopefully this is going to be the final interview. This is going to be where you either accept the job or you go find another place to interview at. And this is going to be a very different scenario than the first 2. This is going to be a little bit more, maybe they may grill you a little bit more. Most likely, if you went through the stage shift and you held your composure and you did well and everybody had good things to say about you, they probably called references. So they may ask you very specific information about your past history.
Yeah, that's a good point. They've probably done their homework. At this point, you're not competing against 15 other people.
Right.
If you've made it to the final interview, it's probably a handful at
probably
most.
3 or 4. Right.
So they're going to be willing to put in the homework to really make sure that you're the right match for the job. So you're absolutely right. They're probably calling your references. They're going to look really closely at your experience. You're probably going to be interviewing with a lot more people. Whether it's a panel of people all at once or sort of
a handoff scenario.
Yeah, multiple interviews with different people throughout the establishment, so lots of people can get a sense for what you're like. I would definitely expect that. And then also the other thing to note is that this interview is really where the rubber hits the road in terms of negotiating specifics, things like compensation, details of the job, of day in the life, that kind of stuff. So this is really where those conversations are going to happen.
Right, and so they're basically, they're looking for things that just don't align with their program at this point. They're looking for any flags, any signals,
any deal
to
breakers.
cut somebody. It almost feels like a reality TV show at this point, right? But if you're prepared, you don't have anything shady in your past that they're going to dig up or anything like that. You're sitting good. You've done all your homework. You're all the way up to this point. You're in good shoes. It's yours to lose, basically. But when you start to talk negotiation about salary and stuff like that, it's once again, you kind of have to know your number. You have to stick to your guns. You have to, really kind of fight for your own, for yourself at this point. And the other thing is, it's not always about the number, right? So if you need, let's say, I'm going to throw a number out there. Let's say you need $52,000 a year to live. You know, is that post-tax? Is that pre-tax? It's something that you really need to know. But there's a lot of other things involved
There's
there,
some
too.
nuance there, too. I mean, imagine that they come back with a number that's lower than that. You may have a little bit of flexibility by getting creative. First and foremost, I would ask about their bonus program, if they have one. Now, a couple little gotchas on the bonus program. I have strong feelings about bonus programs. I think
I've been caught before.
But on the other hand, you've seen them done really well.
I have. Yeah.
I know you worked in one place where it was a significant part of your take-home
salary.
salary.
It was almost 25% of my take-home.
And it was incredibly, I think it was incredibly motivating for you and the rest of the team.
Right.
And then you also worked somewhere where there was this sort of long-standing promise that they would eventually implement a bonus program, and they never did.
Right. So to Julia's point here is like, if they say, oh yeah, we'd like to do that one day. They don't have one in place, first of all. They're never going to have one in place until somebody really forces their hand on this, and that could be years.
Don't plan on it.
Right.
You better be able to pay your rent without it.
Right.
You have to assume that if it doesn't exist already, and if they can't prove, and if they can't tell you that they have already paid out on it at least once, then you need to assume it doesn't exist.
Right. So some questions to ask is basically just get specific. Julie kind of touched on this briefly, but basically, when's the last time you paid out on your bonus program? I would ask them, what are your metrics? How does somebody fulfill the requirements to achieve their bonus? Is it a team goal where for me it was kitchen and all of front of house had to hit all the right numbers, so you better believe you didn't want to be that one guy that didn't hit their number. So everyone's going to be a little bit more aggressive in that scenario, but you really want to know the details of this before you sign on.
Because if they have a bonus program that requires you to double the margin or something.
Right, something unrealistic.
Then that's cute, but it's never going to happen.
Right.
And they've probably never paid out on it before, and that's a good signal that it's not realistic, or that the bonus program is structured based on metrics that you may not have control over, which is also equally frustrating, and equally not lucrative.
Right, and it could be very demoralizing for a management team, which will track it down to the staff. If they have these unrealistic expectations on their bonus program, could be why the other manager left. But get to understand this. That's one lever you can pull, is ask them about, is there a way to increase my salary based on bonuses? The other thing that you could do is ask them, and this is legal or illegal depending on where you are in the country, I think.
Yeah, do your research. This might be state by state.
Or even a restaurant, if they're comfortable with it or not. But if you're able to take bar shifts. And there's a couple ways to phrase it. Like, if they're hiring an hourly supervisor is one thing, but if they're hiring a salaried manager, that's a whole different thing, because sometimes salaried managers aren't supposed to take tips. So, one of the levers you can pull on this end is, are there opportunities for me to work shifts behind the bar? That could bring up your compensation, and you can go from there.
Yeah, I think that's another good option for sure. Now, we talked a lot about pay. I think that's what most people think of when you say compensation, but there are other things at play here, things that are important to ask about. Vacation policy, I know, don't laugh.
If they have one, how do you get your days off?
Yeah, sick policy, again, don't laugh.
Retirement package.
Now this is just a comedy.
The hits are just rolling.
Joking aside, we shouldn't be unfair. They may offer these benefits.
They could.
And but perhaps most commonly and most important is, of course, health insurance. If that is something that is offered. I know it's very rarely offered for bartenders, but it does start to become more common when you get into management positions.
Right.
I don't know whether the bar manager is eligible. Maybe it's just a GM level position, but ask.
Right.
It's definitely worth asking, and especially if that's something that you need. If you have a spouse who has you covered, maybe it's not such a big deal. But these are all parts of your compensation structure that you should be prepared to talk about.
Yeah, and there are a lot of other things too. You touch on most of them. Time off. Retirement plans. If you work for a corporate environment or somebody that has multiple restaurants, this could be a benefit that is really, really attractive to you.
That's true. That's a really good point.
And it's hard to come across those jobs, but they're out there. They're definitely out there. One of the other things that you could ask, and this is really big in the craft cocktail world and bars, is education. This is something we take really seriously, and I think it's one of the hallmarks of a craft cocktail bar that separates them from a normal bar. Is we really take the education seriously on many different levels, whether it be craft cocktails, wine, service,
Yeah.
all these different areas. But we've gone to a lot of different conferences and see entire bar teams there.
Yeah. I don't know how they do it, but it's wonderful that they do. I wouldn't say it's super common,
No.
but it's much more common than it used to be.
Right.
And one of the things that, I mean, I know you had an experience where your bar paid for, I think they just paid for the tickets to a couple seminars at Tails.
Right.
But the expectation there was that Chris would come back and actually sort of report back to the team on what he learned. That's fairly common, but knowing that those opportunities are available to you, it's almost a form of compensation in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially if you're interested in that, if you really want to show your dedication to learning and growing, this is a great thing to ask about too.
Yeah, so don't forget to inquire about all of these things. Like, just make a list of things you want to talk about in that final interview, compensation structures, any creative ideas you have to hit the number that you're hoping to get. Be prepared. Don't expect them to come to the table and say, "Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're hoping
No
to
problem.
pay." Most likely, you're going to have to get creative on your.
There'll be a negotiation.
Right.
And that, as there always is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing to mention is moving outside of compensation. I think that you really must talk about expectations in terms of the job responsibilities.
Yes.
I mean, just starting really simple. What are the hours?
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to be working 90 hours a week? They probably won't admit it. But
Right. And I mean, when I had to work 90 hours a week, it was an exceptional scenario. But, there's always that conversation, or the phrasing that I've seen is, "Oh, we really hope for work-life balance." It's along the lines, if you don't have a bonus structure, it's not going to happen. Same thing. So ask them about the hours. Do the math in your head. You know you're going to work 50 hours a week if you're a bar manager. That's just going to be what it is.
Yeah.
Ask about days off, that kind of stuff. Get a really good understanding about the job you're about to take.
And what are you going to be responsible for?
Yeah.
It could be a broad spectrum of things, but, are you going to be responsible for making the schedule? Are you going to be responsible for designing the cocktail menu? Are you going to have any sort of creative freedom for that cocktail menu? Especially if that's something that's important to you. I think it's really good to ask. What are some other things that might be common responsibilities for a bar manager?
Well, I think, hiring your team could
Training.
be, hopefully is in your in area of responsibility. Training. It hopefully is your area of responsibility as well. Julia mentioned the menu. All of these things you want to hopefully have control over, and not by control, I mean you don't do it yourself, but you can help.
You can influence them.
Right, and your team can provide their insights and their opinions and stuff like that. This is also something that was kind of frustrating for me is one job I had, they wouldn't let other bartenders contribute to the menu. It was all me. No matter how much I wanted to bring the other bartenders in to build a team, they're like, "Nope, you're the guy." And
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So really understand, what you're going to be able to influence it and lead your bar team in.
Yeah, definitely. I think that probably just about covers the final interview. I mean, Godspeed.
Yeah, good luck. Best of luck.
Good luck.
I mean, luck is not anything to do
If you
with
got to this point, you know what you're doing.
Right.
I think that at this point, it really is just making sure you're a good fit and that they're a good fit for you as well.
Absolutely.
So what is the best practice for following up? You finish your interview, you say, "Thank you very much." You take the hand of that hiring manager, you say, "Thank you. It was great to meet you. I really enjoyed meeting your team. I'm really excited about this position."
When are you looking to make a final decision?
Okay.
They'll most likely be in a couple of days because they're probably hurting for a manager.
Probably.
But get that date in your head and just say, "Look, I understand you're really busy. If I don't hear back 2 days past that date, whatever it is, if it's a Tuesday or Thursday, if I don't hear from you past, on that Thursday, do you mind if I just reach out to you? What's the best way to get a hold of you? Is it phone? Is it email? Text message? What's going to be the best way to kind of circle back on this?"
And that puts the ball in their court, which is nice too.
Right.
But it also shows motivation on your part. And it gives you the opportunity to follow up, which is always a good thing.
Right. And forethought, the ability to even ask that question and be diplomatic, I think is really important. And then when that day comes, if you haven't heard, follow up. Make sure you follow up, because this could be another one of those tests of they tell everybody to follow up if they haven't heard on a specific date. and maybe somebody gets a little bit disheartened and they don't follow up. Well, that's another reason not to hire this person, right?
Exactly.
So do your due diligence, follow up, and thank them for their time. Be very, very, very gracious.
Yeah.
And just say thank you for your time and go from there.
So hopefully this 3-part series has given you a little bit of food for thought as you look forward at your career and decide whether bar management is a path that you want to take. And hopefully, as you actually move forward and begin looking for those bar management jobs. I know we've heard from a lot of bartenders who are looking at this step in their career, so I hope that this is something that they will find useful, that will maybe get a few more bartenders up into those management and leadership positions. By the way, I know it's been a million years since we've mentioned this, but if you like this podcast, it would really mean a lot to us to go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. There's actually a direct link in the show notes at mixologytalk.com/123.
123.
There's a link in there that'll show you how to leave a review in iTunes, and those reviews really do help us. Not only do they make us feel better about ourselves, not gonna lie, I mean, as long as they're good reviews, right?
Look what Tony from Washington said about our
thanks,
review.
Tony.
They
You're
love
the
us.
best. Love you. Not only do they make us feel better about ourselves, but they do help other people find this podcast. So we really do appreciate them. For everybody who's already left a review, thank you very much. Love ya.
Love ya.
Next time, if I remember correctly, I think we have an interview, right?
Yeah, so we're going to continue with a focus on career. I have a couple of interviews I've already done, which I'm really, really excited about sharing with everyone on how to further your career in a couple of different ways. So very excited to share those with everyone, so stay tuned for those.
See you next time.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.